Hello everyone, Reverend Annette here with another story, another two stories from the Jesse Tree. This one's called The Foreigner. The next morning, the boy did not come. Food poisoning, thought the old man, that sandwich. And he was angry because he could not concentrate on the sheaf of corn he was carving. Fool boy, even when he was not there, he could manage to make a nuisance of himself. Then, after lunch, he came, his hair wet from swimming. Didn't Jesus have any girl ancestors? He asked, not wasting time on hello. Well, of course he did. But they aren't allowed to climb in the Jesse tree, right? Of course they are. In fact, this sheaf of corn I'm carving right now. The old man broke off as soon as he realised his mistake. But it was too late. He was obliged to tell the story of Ruth. Ruth was a Moabite, born in Moab, brought up with a Moabite religion. But when she married a foreigner, an Israelite living in her country, she found that she liked the thoughts in his head, the beliefs in his heart. She began to say her prayers to the God of the Israelites. Even when her husband died, Ruth did not fall back into her old Moabite ways. Her greatest friend in the world was now her mother-in-law, Naomi. Naturally, Naomi was heartbroken. Her son was dead, and she was marooned penniless in a foreign land. I must go back home to my own people, she told Ruth. I can't stay here with nothing to live on. I'll come with you, said Ruth. But you were born here in Moab. Your people will look after you. You don't want to be burdened with me. Gently, Ruth took hold of the old woman's hand and laid it against her own cheek. Wherever you go, I shall go. Your people will be my people, and your God, my God. So Ruth and Naomi made a long journey to Bethlehem. Two women without a man to keep them fed, sheltered, safe. They had no land to farm, no flocks to tend. In those days, life for a widow was harder than hard, and Ruth had two mouths to feed, not just one. It was harvest time in the fields. Ruth went with the other women to glean. That means to pick up the ears of barley left behind by the reapers as they hacked down the crop. The spiky stubble pricked her ankles and hands. Her back ached. The other women shunned her, this foreign woman, this Moabite beauty. For every grain of corn she picked up, Ruth let a tear fall. That was when Boaz saw her, the owner of the field. He was a good, kind man. He asked about the foreign beauty, weeping amid his corn, and he liked what he heard. A remarkable girl indeed to leave home for the sake of her mother-in-law. Boaz called her over. When you rest, he said, feel free to sit down with my reapers. And he made sure that the reapers were not unkind to her and that they let plenty of grain fall as they hacked their way through the corn. Ruth told Naomi all about it when she got home that evening, and Naomi began to think about what could be done. Naomi may have had no money to share with her daughter-in-law, but she did have the wisdom of age. I'm distantly related to Boaz. He's a good man, Ruth. I want you to do exactly as I tell you. And of course Ruth did, though the advice was astounding and more than a little frightening. Later, Boaz went to work on the threshing floor, pounding the ears of corn with a leather flail until they jumped like crickets. The air around him was soon smoky with dust. Threshing is exhausting work, and no sooner had Boaz eaten his supper than he curled up alongside the threshing floor and rested his head on a bale of straw. His greying hair was greyer still with corn dust, his mind busy with busyness and prayers. He dozed. When he stirred, the midnight threshing floor was pitch black, but for the merest moonlight. To his dismay, Boaz felt a warm weight resting across his ankles. "Who's there?" He sat bolt upright, only to find the Moabite girl lying across his feet. Boaz blushed, and so did Ruth, though the dark hid their blushes. Her breath shook with fear, but she spoke the words Naomi had told her. "I am Ruth, your handmaid. You are a kinsman of mine. Let me creep under your cloak and be safe." Boaz did better. He married Ruth and gave her and her mother-in-law a comfortable home and a place where they belonged. There were whispers among the gossips, of course. Boaz betrothed? Boaz married? And to a foreigner? But God himself had whispered in Boaz's ear. God, who had once made Eve as a helpmate for Adam, had brought to Bethlehem a wife of such courage and devotion, of such beauty and selflessness, that she would make his town immeasurably richer. The gossips were soon won round. On the day Ruth gave birth to Boaz's son, they bought flowers and little presents and broad sunny smiles. What was the baby called? The carpenter pinched the bridge of his nose with his finger and thumb. "You make me weary with your everlasting questions. Let me see now. Obed." The child's name was Obed. "And what are you going to carve for him?" The carpenter waved his chisel irritably. "Obed's not important. He just grew up to be the father of Jesse and the grandfather of—" "At last, Jesse!" exclaimed the boy loudly and set the church ringing. "Jesse of the Jesse tree!" The boy padded away down the church aisle. His hair was dry now. At the door he turned and called, "Obed was important, I bet. To Ruth and Boaz, I bet he was." "I didn't mean," said the old man. But the church door banged and he was alone. He went back to his work, but found himself saying, as if the boy was still there, "I didn't mean he wasn't important. I only meant that Obed doesn't have a story written down in the Bible. That's all I meant." And he carved a little O above the sheaf of corn. O for Obed. It was only as big as a grain of corn or a teardrop. No one would know it was there except him. But it made him feel better, knowing that he had not left Obed out altogether. The next story is called "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." "Be careful where you step. I put my spectacles somewhere and now I can't find them." The carpenter was in a towering rage. His woodworking tools lay scattered at the foot of the Jesse tree. Without his glasses, he couldn't see his work. Without his glasses, he couldn't see to find his glasses. The boy bounded about the church, searching the side chapels and looking under the pews. "You should have a spare pair." "Think I'm made of money?" "A spare pair of eyes, I meant." "What's this you're carving? It looks like Aladdin's lamp." He returned to the Jesse tree and stood rubbing it with a cuff of his sweatshirt. "It's a cruse of oil," growled the carpenter. "In the old days, a man became king only when the high priest anointed his head with holy oil." "So is this a story about a king or a priest?" "What story? Was I telling a story?" "You may as well," said the boy, making himself comfortable, "until your glasses turn up." There was once a woman who so longed for a child that she made a deal with God. "Grant me a son, Lord," she prayed, "and I'll give him back to you." True to her word, when Samuel was born, his mother loved him, nursed him, enjoyed and taught him, and then gave him up to be a servant in the temple at Shiloh. Eli, the high priest, was a very old man, older than I am, and blind, pretty near blind. He had sons who would take over from him when he died, but in the meantime He had Samuel to be his hands and eyes. Priest and boy lived out their days and nights in the temple, sleeping on the floor in the big darkness. During the day there was always noise, singing, chanting, the murmur of doves, the twitter of sparrows. At night the silence was solid black. But it held no terror for either of them. Eli's whole world was dark, and for Samuel there was a glimmer of the sacred lamp burning like a single watchful eye. Samuel, Samuel. The boy raised himself up on one elbow. The words had awoken him. The old priest plainly needed him. Perhaps he was ill. Jumping up, Samuel ran to Eli's side. Yes, master, here I am. What's the matter, child? Said Eli, bleary with sleep. You called, so I came. I did not call. Go back to sleep, child. Samuel went and lay down again. Samuel, Samuel. It was a gentle voice and very familiar. Samuel jumped up at once and hurried to Eli's side. Here I am, master. I did not call, said the old priest, opening his blind eyes. You are dreaming a lot tonight. So Samuel went back to bed. But again the voice called to him. Samuel, Samuel. Samuel felt his way through the darkness to Eli's side. You did call, master, you did. Then Eli understood. Go back to bed, child, and if the voice calls again, say, Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. All his short life, Samuel had been trained to obey without question or quibble. He went back and laid his head down, though his eyes strained open in the darkness and his heart was jumping. Samuel, Samuel, called the voice, patiently awaiting an answer. Samuel knelt up on his bedroll. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. And God spoke to him out of the gentle dark, out of the glow of the sacred lamp, or out of the most distant galaxy. I have news for Eli, bad news, and you must be the one to break it. His sons are not fit to do the work their father has done. They will not live to take his place. You are my choice, Samuel. You are the one I need. When the voice fell silent, Samuel did not want to tell the good old man such crushing news. But the next morning, Eli was anxious to know. What did God say to you, boy? What secrets did he entrust to you? Samuel was afraid that his words would kill the old man there and then. But he spoke them faithfully, and Eli nodded, fixing his shineless eyes on the shineless future. Then he patted the air with a trembling hand. God is good, he said, let it come. The Jesse tree stood incomplete. Its lower branches were crowded with leaves and symbols, but the upper branches were still trapped inside the slab of oak, like something ancient and only part unearthed. I see them, cried the boy, his sharp eyes catching the glint of glass on a stone window ledge. He ran and fetched the spectacles, and the carpenter, after dabbing his eyes, crammed the glasses back on his face. Shoo now, he growled. I've wasted enough time today. I have to get on. I thought it would be Jesse today, called the boy from the porch. After the O you carved for Obed. O? What O? Oh, that O, said the carpenter gruffly. Today Samuel, tomorrow Jesse. Then he wondered why he had said it. The boy would come back now for sure, expecting another story. And I'll come back again and tell you that story, the story of Jesse, the Jesse of the Jesse tree. See you soon. Bye-bye for now.